I remember you said, okay, it's important to study, it's important to do research, do all those things, but there's more life outside the education. Be involved in ACI, be involved in other student organizations within the University of Miami. That's gonna give you networking opportunities. That's gonna open you paths whenever you transition to your professional career. So that's how it all started. Hi everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Engineering Greatness, an original podcast series produced by the American Concrete Institute. My name is Álvaro Ruiz. I'm a postdoc associate at University of Miami, and today I'm honored to have a true concrete rock star with me, none other than Dr. Antonio Nani, the 100th president of the American Concrete Institute and a distinguished professor and chair at the University of Miami. Hi, Dr. Nani, how are you?
Wonderful, Alvaro. Actually, it's a great pleasure to be with you today. I know that this is going to be special because the two of us have a long relationship. And, I think that over time, you started as a student here, but now I consider you as a colleague and a friend. So I think this is going to be a real fun to explore some of the things that we have done together or the things that we want to do in the future. So fire up.
Yeah. I'm excited. So let's get started. I think why don't we start you've been around concrete and around civil engineering for a while now. What inspired you to get into this topic?
Wow, this is a question that would require 15 hours of answer. No, but I'll try to be super fast. My, love affair with actually not necessarily concrete, but structure, started when I was a child. There is really nothing that I remember in particular that made me think that engineering was the profession that I wanted to follow. But I have to, recognize that my parents were extremely supportive. And I, throughout my, formal education, I went through with this idea of doing engineering. And while doing engineering, I realized that steel was too easy for me. And so I picked concrete because it was a much more difficult topic. So that's how it started and and that's why it lasted for so long.
That's interesting. And it's very interesting because my path was pretty similar. When I was a kid, my father, my uncle, and other family members were involved in construction, but I didn't know that I wanted to do engineering until I was around 10 or 12. I was a kid. I used to play in the backyard with my brother, building things, helping my father, helping my uncle. But then I was doubting, is it architecture that I like? Is it engineering? And then I thought engineering was actually more fascinating than architecture due to all those mathematicals and all those models and physics and all that exciting stuff. So that's how I also got involved in engineering and specifically in structures too. So that's interesting.
What you're saying is interesting, but I think both of us have an accent, right? And I think it would be interesting for our audience to know not necessarily where we come from, but what led us to the United States. So why don't you tell us a little more? Being from Miami or living in Miami, the accent that you have is very similar to many other people in this area. And so I think this would be very exciting if you tell us a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, of course. Well, originally from Spain, pretty close where you are from. Italy with a little bit better food, but it's close enough, which I think we might have some things to argue there. But so I started in Spain. I was in Spain until I was 21 around. I did civil engineering there. And while I was doing civil engineering, I had this opportunity to go abroad. There was one of these programs, do you want to go abroad for 6 months, 1 year? So I picked and I went to Germany. But it's funny because when I was a kid, before I made that decision, I always told my parents that I would never wanted to leave Spain, that I was too afraid to leave home. Then I went to Germany. I found out that it was pretty interesting to be abroad and to be with friends. So I stayed there a little longer and pursued my master's there in Germany. Um, and when I was doing my master's, I thought, okay, once I'm done with my master's in civil engineering, I'll go back to Spain, finally. But then when I was there was a professor, Dr. Kampman, who was teaching in the US, but at the same time gave us a short lecture in Germany. And he was like, is there someone that wants to go to the US to do the master thesis? And I'm like, well, I mean, I was afraid to go abroad, but now that after 2 years I'm used to it, why not going across the ocean and go to the US for 6 months? And I thought the same thing. I'll go there, I'll be 6 months, and I'll finally go back to Spain. And I was there, and when I arrived there, that was the time when I met you. And we started to work on that project. And then all of a sudden, you mentioned, why don't you stay for a PhD? At the beginning, trust me, I had to Google what does a PhD mean because I had no idea what it was, and that was not my first plan. But then after talking with you, talking with Dr. Degato, at the end, I thought it was a good idea, and I don't regret it. And it's been 7 years now in Miami, so it's been a fun journey. What about you?
Wow. So I think we have so much in common. Not only we were born and raised, around the Mediterranean Sea, but I think our journey to the US has so much in common. After I finished my engineering degree, my bachelor at the University of Bologna, by the way, the oldest institution in the world, uh, I got, similarly to you, the opportunity to go overseas. Overseas, I went to Africa, to South Africa, and I did my master at WITS. And while I was there, I was in touch with a faculty member here at the University of Miami, Professor Ronald Zollner, who made me an offer of an assistantship. But I have to admit, in full transparency, as probably I told you before, that the reason I was so excited to come to Miami, and this was 1980, so quite some time ago, was not so much for the university or the PhD. It was because of Miami Vice. So to me, Miami Vice was an incredible motivation to move to Miami. I did not know that this would become my home away from home. And after, completing my PhD here, doing 3 years on faculty, then going to Penn State for 9 years, University of Missouri at Rolla, now S&T for another 9 years, I came back here to UN, and I'm thrilled to be at this institution. I think the institution itself has transformed and become really a place where education and research are, of primary importance. In the old days, when I joined, it was called Centennial, but I think this attraction that is due to the fantastic weather that we experience here is gone. Let me ask you, kind of related to this. I think I know a little bit of your background, but after your experience here as a student, you became, and you went to industry, you became extremely active in ACI. And one of the difficulties that we have in the Institute is really to attract young professionals. How did you end up being engaged in the Institute? How made the difference, and what was the primary reason for it? So I really would like to transition from education to professional practice. Tell us a story.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting story because it all started with your advice the first day I came to the University of Miami. I remember you said, okay, it's important to study, it's important to do research, do all those things, but there's more life outside the education. Be involved in ACI, be involved in other student organizations within the University of Miami. That's gonna give you networking opportunities. That's gonna open you paths whenever you transition to your professional career. So that's how it all started. So I remember when we were students, we used to go. I mean, we used to go to all these conventions, and it was very fun. I mean, we started to get involved with Canet, being involved in S805, which is for students, then transitioning to S806, which is for young professionals. And then once you start to get a feel of how ACI works, and then you have a mentor that supports you, which is, I think, one of the keys here, then you start to see what is the value that ACI can give to you on the personal life and on the professional life. So I tried to get very involved when I was a student. Then when I transitioned to be in the industry and I started to work for a company called Mafic, that was the time that I said, okay, wait a second. If I've learned that ACI can give all of this to you as a student and to future professionals, let me keep to be involved, because that way I can get out of ACI everything that I saw I could give. And that was the time when I started. I kept being involved. I kept being involved in all these committees. I thought that I would grow professionally if I would keep involved, and that's how I did it. And now that I'm back in the University of Miami, I keep doing the same thing, because I think it's a journey, right? I mean, you start as a student, you get that sense of motivation, and then to keep it, then you see all those effects of what the ACA can give as a professional, basically. So that it was, I mean, it's been a nice journey. I think it's just the beginning, or I hope it is. I know your journey has been a little longer than mine, so it would be very interesting to know how you all started, and then how did it take you to be now the 100th president of ACI?
Wow, that's also a long story, but I think I mentioned this in one of my memos in Concrete International. Actually, I'm sure that I did. It started in 1985. I was a PhD student here at the University of Miami, and Professor Wimal Suarez asked me to join him at the first convention that I ever attended. It happened to be in Denver, in Colorado. So the idea of going to a convention and potentially go and do some skiing was very exciting. So from there until now, and you can count the years, I only have missed one convention, only one out of these many years. And it was the one in Philadelphia, or one of the many in Philadelphia, one of the few in Philadelphia, because I was in Japan. But I think you brought up in your comments about involvement in ACI, what I think is one of the primary reasons to participate in the activities of the Institute is not only, to do the volunteering work that can lead to, better knowledge and improving our industry. There is also the human side, which is the networking that you mentioned. And you share things with them that go beyond the technical. So I think, my journey has lasted so many years. Hopefully it's not over yet, at least for this year. I'm doing a lot of traveling. I'm meeting individuals like yourself who are really eager to get engaged. And I think that this is really the strength of our organization, the ability to understand the two-way issue. In other words, ACI can give to people, but ACI receives from people. So I think this is really, exciting. And I would encourage everyone who's listening to us to become, even more engaged and more involved. And we're going to have a great convention in a city like Boston at the end of October. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of the great opportunity. In your remarks, you also mentioned something interesting. You, as a student, were also involved in committee activities. So it was not only participation, it was not only presenting papers, it was not only, networking, but at the very beginning of your engagement with the Institute, you also felt compelled to contribute to the committee work. Can you tell us a little more about these committees that, maybe are not very well known to people outside the organization?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that at the beginning you are afraid of doing. I mean, going to committee meetings when you just started, it's not the fun part. I mean, first of all, you get into one of those rooms. You don't know if you need to sit in the front row, you need to sit in the back. Can you talk? Can you participate? I mean, it's tough because I mean, you realize that in those committees, there are topics that are being discussed that then are affecting the entire concrete industry. So it's like, okay, wait a second. Like I'm a student. Like, can I be here? So that was a little bit the feeling at the beginning. Of course, through the networking that you do, you talk to other professionals, you talk to your mentor, you talk to people that are involved, students and young professionals that have been involved in ACI, and everyone tells you the same thing. You need to go. I mean, that's the place where right now you may be just as an audience because you just started in ACI, but as you get involved, you are going to be the one in that front row. But I mean, to get into that front row, you first need to understand how everything works. So my recommendation to all students or young professionals, or even people that are not specifically young professionals, but are new to the Institute and go to a convention, it's to go through the entire agenda, see all those committee meetings, see the ones that may be interesting for you, the ones that are topics that are related to what you're doing, and go. Be there, talk to the people within the committee, talk even to the chair. I mean, chairs of those committees run the meeting, but afterwards are professionals and normal people in the sense that you can talk to them, even though sometimes you think like, okay, wait a second, can I talk to them? Yes. So I mean, it's just an effort of getting involved, don't being afraid, and yes, and contributing. And I think that's the key, right? At the beginning, you are not going to be able to write the entire ACA 318 or 3440 code. But if there's a specific task that maybe needs help and you think that you're a good fit for that, volunteer, do it. You'll get more important tasks as you go, and hopefully one day, I mean, you'll have the impact as some of the greatest in ACA have had. So I mean, I think that's a little bit my advice to people that are not involved yet. But coming back to one of your points, Dr. Nani, you said that people need to get involved other than, or you've always said, right, the importance of networking, the importance of being involved in ACI. What would be your advice to someone that is in the position of meeting ACI for the first time or just join the institution? What would be your advice in terms of getting involved and making an impact within the institution? What should that person do?
Oh boy, I think you said some of the key words. And to me, the most important one is do not be afraid. In other words, the life of the institute and the ability of the institute to develop and deliver knowledge rests primarily on the work of the volunteers. Staff does an incredible job to help the volunteers get to where the volunteers need to go. But it's the work of the volunteers that makes ACI what ACI is. So the point I'm trying to make is when you go to ACI at your first convention, and by the way, there is many other ways to contribute. Today we focus on convention because it's the place where we touch one another. But if you go to convention, don't be afraid to be engaged. And you said it, sit in one of the committee meetings, the area that is dear to your heart. We all have a topic. For me, in the old days was actually, I started with paving. I started with 325 because my work as a PhD was very much related to pavement. And I became a member of that committee eventually. First, associate member as a student, and then as a full member or a voting member, as we call them, after I became a faculty member. Talk to the chair. Don't be afraid to also volunteer for something. And so this is really the attitude. You are there with other volunteers. Obviously, some of them have a much longer experience. They already made an impact, but let's say the future of the Institute rests on the young people. The young people like yourself, are the next generation. So the attitude of older people like myself is we need to bring you up to speed. But in order for us to bring you up to speed, you have to have the desire to be brought up. And so be there, enjoy it, and participate, and don't be afraid. You are in a world of volunteers, and believe this or not, everybody has been in your shoes at one time or another. Everybody was at one time young. Everybody started with a convention. So there is, again, even the senior people can understand it. I'm going to totally switch topic now, and I'm going to ask you a question that is a bit loaded, and I'll give you a hint if you want. One of the things that kind of motivates me now to be engaged in ACI is because I think that these are really the best of times for our industry. Some people, the public, may think that I'm crazy. What do you mean by this? You guys in the concrete industry are responsible for 7 to 10% of the CO2 emission. How can this be a great moment for, the construction industry and concrete in particular? And I think it's because of the opportunity that we have to generate innovation. So this challenge becomes an opportunity. Now the question, you are a young person. You will be around for another, I would say, 70 years, right? Whereas
hopefully
I reverse it for myself. Maybe I hope to be around for another 30. But so your generation, eventually, you get married, you will have children, you look at the future. How do you see this challenge for our industry? How do you see this sustainability issue being hopefully more of an opportunity than a challenge? What is your position as a young man that is looking at the situation that we have nowadays? This past month, July was the hottest on record. And how do you see yourself as a professional that hopefully can help making the impact? I know it's a difficult question, and that's why I'm asking it.
Yeah, I couldn't expect less from my former professor. So yeah, no, I mean it's a nice question because it's a very interesting topic also for me. And the thing is that maybe my response is a little bit tweaked because of the experience that I had in the last years, that within the concrete industry or the civil engineering industry, I've been, as you know, and within the department within the University of Miami, we've been pretty much focused on technologies such as reinforcement and other concrete technologies that support that sustainable vision of today's construction. So it's true that we contribute to a lot of those emissions related to global warming and others. But lately, there's a big movement of change, a big movement of research, a big movement of innovation that us within the University of Miami, I think we are greatly contributing. As you said, I mean, it's a tricky opportunity because I mean it's an opportunity because we are in a pretty bad situation. But that brings a lot of opportunities. Whenever you're in a bad situation, you have the opportunity to make it better. And I think that's where we are now. I mean, the way I see it is that I'm happy to see all of these trends also within ACI of incorporating innovative materials that decrease the amount of contribution to the global warming. A lot of innovative technologies. For example, artificial intelligence. Right now, I know there are multiple projects also funded by ACI that incorporate this type of technologies to see, okay, what could we do knowing what we know and using technologies like artificial intelligence to expedite the process that we are already immersed in, that is reduction of CO2 and other emission gases that contribute to global warming. So one of the hopes that I have is that since everyone is, or I feel that it's on the same wave, and having ACI supporting those efforts, for example, with different centers of excellence that we have right now that incorporate new technologies, new research for new materials, this opportunity is going to be a bright opportunity and it's going to be expedited by all that. And we're going to see hopefully good results pretty soon, sooner than what we expected. And that's the beauty of all this. And I think that's one of the things that maybe we can discuss. And I'm sure that you have way more to add to that. That what is ACI? Because I know some of it, but not as much as what you know of what ACI is doing. But what is ACI's role and what is ACI doing, incorporating all these technologies, helping the society reduce the impact that we all know that we have?
Okay, let me use the response to this question almost as the final thought, and then we have to wrap it up because we cannot keep this audience with us for the entire afternoon. You mentioned centers of excellence. We have now created 3 centers of excellence at the Institute to look exactly at these issues. One looking at non-metallic materials, the other one net zero carbon, and the third one about productivity. So what is ACI attempting to do? ACI wants to be ahead of the implementation of new technologies at the discovery side, at the validation side, at the efficiency side, rather than being reactive. The other thing that I think is most exciting is we have made the commitment to sustainability. I hope that this coming November, we will have ready for distribution, maybe not for publication, but for public comment, a sustainability code to go together with all the building codes that we have and become, one of the anchors like 318. And the other thing that I hope we can accomplish as an institute is to be at COP28 in Dubai this coming December. I think it's fundamental for our organization to say that we understand the issues and then we are working towards the solution with the rest of the construction industry. Maybe this is the time to kind of say goodbye to everybody. I really want to thank you all for joining us, and in particular, thank Alvaro for giving me the opportunity. This Engineering Greatness series is really meant to be for young professionals. So when I was asked to participate, I thought maybe I can still consider myself young at heart, maybe not in terms of young at age. The Engineering Greatness Center Greatness, podcast comes out every month. So we really would like you to consider and remain active in this interesting and intimate conversation among 2 people. Be sure that you subscribe to these podcasts through Apple, Spotify, Google, and all the other platforms. And if you need more information related to the American Concrete Institute, please don't forget to visit our website, concrete.org. With this, thanks, and see you next time.